Okay, for this PolyNome Conversations, I'm talking to Travis Orbin. Hey, Travis.
Hello.
Thank you very much for taking some time to come and talk PolyNome.
Not a
Um,
problem.
I heard about you literally a week ago via the Sean Crowder interview,
Mhm.
and the fact that he was saying, Virgil Donati kind of put you up on his website and was saying you're the bomb. um, was certainly interesting, and that Sean was saying your stuff is like some of the hardest he's ever had to try and figure out. I'm like, I got to check this guy out.
Poor
Um,
Sean. Sorry for
so
torturing you.
I know. Well, I mean, it's pretty amazing stuff, and I'm going to suggest to anybody that's watching this who wants to know more that they check out that interview with Sean because he goes into a lot of depth and covers a lot of ground. Uh, and I am literally just getting into your music at the moment. And we discussed, I got in touch and sent you a copy of PolyNome and had to go up programming in one of your tracks that you sent me the notation for. So that's what we're going to talk about. So anybody who's watching can kind of learn a bit more about your style and how you can utilize PolyNome to enter that stuff. Um, what surprised me because the first I heard was really these tracks that you sent, which were just drums, and it sounds pretty mental. Um, and then I listened to the track on the album, and I guess I was expecting, because of the Virgil Donati reference, I was expecting kind of heavy guitar stuff, but the instrumentation there's like violins and string sections, and it reminds me of
Oh
kind
yeah,
of a Zappa meets King Crimson kind of vibe with the
sure.
heavy stuff mixed in there. It's very unique, I would say.
Thank you. Yeah, this example in particular that you're talking about is from a song called Cosmocrator, which opens Finite 3, and it's the bridge section. And yeah, the Finite series in particular has a very specific concept behind its orchestration. It's just four main voices, just drum set, bass guitar, synthesizer, and strings.
Mm-hmm.
Violin, viola, or in the case of Finite 3, a seven-string electric violin.
And are those
So
all played live?
well, we've never played a gig. I doubt we ever will. I don't really aspire to do that, but all the instruments are, yes, they're tracked, live. Maybe
Yeah,
there's overdubs and stuff, but it's
as
all
in it's
real
not. Yeah,
real
it's not
instruments.
MIDI. Yeah, I mean
Correct.
that's impressive. And when you question from me, I mean, you create this stuff and it's ridiculous. It's like ridiculously hard to play. When you've tracked it, are you in a position where you could play the whole track? If you've got the charts that you can play it through, or do you have to kind of break it into sections to get it down, or like what kind of level do you are you?
When I compose something and then ultimately set out to record it, usually, well, I always rehearse the song in its entirety. So, when I feel that I'm ready to embark upon tracking, then I can play the whole piece. If And I pretty much just track it by the seat of my pants. I just go through, and then if I screw something up, then I just give myself a couple bars of pre-roll and take it from there.
Yeah,
Because I know when I'm playing, if it's going to translate well and sound good in the final product.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, when I in the actual rehearsal process, I'll hone in on certain parts. I won't just run through the whole piece and call it a day. I'll run through it, and then I'll hone in on certain sections. Obviously, in Cosmocrator, the part we're going to discuss, I rehearse just that section, and it's in tiny entirety, quite a bit,
Hmm.
and yeah, so and I start at well below the performance tempo as well, and work my way up incrementally.
Cool. I mean, all right. So, viewer beware. This is going to look really crazy. I am going to share my screen or attempt to share my screen. And do you see this now?
I do.
You do. Okay. So
Hmm.
this is what Travis sent me. I have two scores here. One of them is for the hands, I believe, and the other one is for the feet.
Right.
So the foot part here is basically some quintuplets 2 bars of quintuplets, and then 11 over the bar of 4/4. So already you can see we're going to get into really strange territory.
And those are single strokes orchestrated between the pedal hi-hats leading with the right.
Okay. And then that basically happens a few times in the piece. So that's the pedal hats part. And then the kit part, we have a click intro here, and then these rhythms here, like bar 3 looks very straight ahead. Bar 4, we're mixing in some 16ths and some sextuplets. I think this is maybe like a splash cymbal. Is that right?
I think it's a stack, but yeah, an effect symbol.
Yeah. So at first I thought it might be a missing note. I guess it was just something to.
There's also some dynamics that aren't present, but it's okay.
And then we get some quintuplets in here. So that quintuplets played over the 11. So this is kind of pretty crazy stuff. And then we get into this big bar of 7/4 with some double kick. And
this is like a little, I guess, interlude section between the polyrhythmic madness and this. I think this section and the fill section that follows both grow each time, or maybe it's just the fill section. I don't remember.
This grows, yeah. So we've got 7/4 the first time round,
and then what is it, 8/4?
And then it's 8/4 the second time round, which is the same with just an extra beat on the end, right?
Right. Yeah, the pattern is retained. It's just elongated.
And then we get
the fill section is the same. Okay. Yeah. But the fill section at the very end of it grows.
Yes. Yeah. And then we've got more of the 4/4 over quintuplets. And then
so it's 3 bars of polyrhythmic madness, which changes each time, and then a bar of this interlude thing, which elongates each repeat, and then a fill bar, which does not change every time except for the very end. So hopefully that's confusing.
Yeah. So let me see if I can bring up the audio version that you sent me of that, so we can hear it back. Cosmocrator bridge. Let's see if you're able to hear this. Tell me if you get audio.
Got it.
Yeah, you got it. Okay. And this long 7/4 section and the fill. Over quintuplets again. I think I'm missing that bar.
Oh, it's a repeat that goes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then a long 14/4. And then finally the longer fill at the end. Okay, cool. So to put that in context, listener, watcher, you have to go check out the album, and it makes kind of more sense because everything else is doing the same stuff. And this fill kind of has a computer game vibe to it. I thought, like Nintendo kind of, crazy stuff.
Yeah. Power up, one up, man.
So I think what we'll do, I programmed some of that in last night, so I'll play it back in PolyNome, what I ended up with, and then we'll explain how I programmed it in. So first 4/4 section. So I've got the hi-hats, the pedal hi-hats down in metronome 2, sequence of 2. So I'll basically explain how I did this and work through some of the stranger examples, and hopefully kind of cover the basics to the point where it makes sense to you. and then let me know if you have any questions as we go along.
Okay.
So I'll start with a new playlist. So just to quickly explain, if you're using PolyNome on a phone, you see either this screen here, which is the main screen where you have the two sequences, and
Right.
you have the metronome, faders, and mixer down in this part at the bottom. And then you can either swipe to the left to see this side, or you can push this button here. And on the iPad, this actually kind of expands this so we can see the whole screen as the thing. But on the phone, this button will swipe it across so that you see this side.
Mm-hmm.
And this side is either your presets library, which is a bunch of demo presets that come with the app and anything that you've saved as a preset. And a preset is just, this could be a preset. It's just a single thing in sequencer 1 and sequencer 2 in a single time signature. And then also on this right-hand side, when you tap the button at the top, you can choose playlist and playlist manager. So a playlist is essentially a number of presets all lined up. So these could be individual things that looped. This could be just an exercise that you work on, like a singles exercise, or it could be a part of a song, which is what we have in this instance. And you can see, if I go to the bottom of this playlist, the playlist controls, it says auto advance is on plus play. And what that means is when this item, which is set to play 1 repeat, is finished, it will advance to the next item and play. So basically, like, it's playing through each of these items one at a time, like we just saw. So this is how I tend to put pieces of music into PolyNome. Rather than trying to create one really long preset, I put each bar as a new item in a playlist. And that means that you can just loop that bar or a selection of bars, and you can work on this bar individually. It gives you a lot more control, and also it allows you to have time signature and tempo changes within the playlist. So that's what we're looking at here. And the playlist manager is basically your library of playlists. So you can have as many playlists as you want. And in there, these are just the demo playlists that come with it. So I've got the Will Coxon's 136, for example, which is using a playlist to work through the Will Coxon's piece. And there's a video at the top of this that explains how it was programmed, which will help with various things. But what I'm going to do is create a new playlist. So I tap on the plus in the top right and add new playlist. And I'll call it Cosmocrator. So we now have an empty playlist, and I'm going to tap on the plus to add the first item. So I'll choose new item in playlist, and I'll call it bar 1. So looking at the music here, bar 1 is just click on the 1 and the 3. So that's easy to do. So over here, I'm going to edit the pattern, which is basically the first step for anything. You always go into the edit pattern, and this is where you enter a rhythm and accents and diddles and ties and those kind of things, and you assign sounds to the rhythm here. All of this stuff happens in this page. And if you're tapping on the notes, then down the bottom you see all of the rhythm entry stuff. And if you tap below the notes, you see the sound entry options. This is where you assign sounds to those notes. And if you tap above the notes, that's where you can enter accents and diddles and drags and that kind of thing. So I'm just going to tap and hold on the del button, which will give me an option to clear the whole rhythm. And I'll just put in what you have in the score, which is click, rest, click, rest. And then I'm going to exit that, and you can see there's a flashing exclamation mark up here. That means that the changes aren't saved. So if I were to try and do something else, it'll ask me if I want to save the changes or not. I'll tap on this and save the changes. So bar 1 is done. So there's various ways that you can add items to a playlist. The way we entered this one was to tap on the plus and choose a new item in playlist. And that adds something that's based on PolyNome's default preset. Another option is duplicate item with new name, and that will take whatever we've done in here and let you save it with a new name. So if you'd assign some sounds or something like that, that's a good option because it will retain those sounds that you set. So I'm going to choose duplicate item with new name and just delete 1 and put 2. So now we've got our second bar, and the second bar is a click on all 4 beats. So I will again go and edit the pattern of sequencer 1, and this time put in all of the quarter notes, hit done, and save the changes. So we can hear that back by tapping on bar 1 and hitting play, and it will play through these. But one thing to note is, even though there's only a note on 1 and 3 in here, we're hearing clicks on all 4 beats. And the reason for that is the default preset has metronome faders for bar and quarter note up. So if you don't see in the mixer, it's this button underneath play which toggles the mixer. And you can see all of the faders here for everything that's used. You can narrow down to the metronome faders by tapping that metronome button. And the bar level is up, so I'm going to pull that down, and the 1 level is up, so I'm going to pull that down. And volume changes are automatically saved, so I don't need to resave that preset. But the volume changes are separate for each item in a playlist. So if I click on bar 2, you'll see that those faders are up. So I'm just going to pull those down. So now we should have click on 1 and 3, and then all 4 beats. So that's the easy part.
That sure is.
But this process for the rest of it, even though it's much more complicated looking, the process is going to be the same. So what I'm going to do now, because this is kind of the click intro, I'm going to put a section header after this. So to add stuff to a playlist, you can always tap on this plus button, and I'm going to add a section header, and I'll just call it 4/4 so that we know that we're in the 4/4 section. This is a blank preset. It won't be played. It just shows up as a title in the playlist, which can be handy for various reasons. And then I'm going to add a new item by tapping on the plus, new item in playlist, and call it bar 3. And we want bar 3 to look like this. So I'm going to pull down the faders in the metronome, because it pulled that from default because I used new item rather than duplicate item. And the reason I use new item is if I duplicated this item, it would have put it here and I would have had to drag it underneath. So there's different ways you could do things. I'll show you different ones as we go along. So I'm going to edit the pattern and hold delete and clear everything. Now we want to enter this rhythm. So a quarter note followed by a quarter note rest, and then you have a triplet over the last 2 beats. So this palette of rhythms here is divisions of a quarter note. The quarter note's on the left. So you can use this picker to choose a half note, and now we've got divisions of a half note. So if I tap on the triplet, that fills our bar. You can see it's put the bar line in, and it tells us we've filled a whole bar here. So that kind of helps me know I'm correct. And then I'll tap underneath the notes where it says line 1, tap to add sounds. And I believe that this line is floor tom and the middle line is snare drum. Is that correct?
Right.
So
I think so.
And I think it is. And then down on the bottom you've got the kick. So these buttons are set to the default sounds, but we have what we need on here for the time being. So the small lowercase r is set to tom 3, so I'll put a tom on the first note, and then it moves us to the next note. So I want a snare drum on there, and then floor tom on the next 2 notes. So that is this bar entered. Hit done. And I want to save the changes. And while we're here, let's put in the pedal hi-hat part. So bar 3 on the pedal hats is quintuplets played, you said single strokes between the feet. Mm-hmm. So we have sequencer 1 and sequencer 2. I'm going to edit the pattern of sequencer 2. And to get quintuplets, you have on here like a rest, single note, 2 notes, triplets, 16th, sextuplets, 30-second notes, and then this button is custom to be whatever you want. So it goes from 5 up to 64. So you can have whatever you want in there. And this is currently divisions of the quarter note, but you can have divisions of any note in there. So we want 4 lots of quintuplets. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That fills our bar. And then I'll tap underneath to add the sounds. Now these letters were originally based, they just used to be just 4, right, left, kick, and hat is what they kind of stood for. And you can assign whatever sounds to them you want. And then I added these extra ones and decided that further R's of different kinds made the most sense, because it's different to most ways of entering things, but it gives you some flexibility. So what I'm going to do is use K and H for the hi-hat sounds under here so that we can play them kind of between the feet. Or you could just put R, that will play a hi-hat sound if you want. But just to demonstrate how you can change the sounds of these, I'm going to tap on the K, tap and hold, and that brings up a sound picker. And I am currently working on a new way of choosing categories. On your version, I believe you'll have some buttons that you can swipe across to find hi-hats. I'm just going to click on this category drop down and choose hi-hats. And you've got lots of different hi-hat sounds and hi-hat foot sounds. So I'll use hi-hat with the F in the circle for the kick button. And then for the H button, I'll tap on that. And I'll use a different hi-hat foot sound so that we can hear the difference between the two. So basically just assigned those sounds to those letters. And then when we hit done, we get back to the main page. You can see that both K and H are assigned to hi-hat sounds. And this is another PolyNome feature. If you put in just KH, it will loop that over the whole pattern. So you don't have to fill the whole rhythm with the sound. It will just loop whatever you've put in. So you could put a paradiddle in there and it would play that paradiddle over the quintuplets. That's a drummer feature. So when I hit done, and I'll save these changes. So now, if I play this, it's going to loop around the playlist. Back to bar 1, back to bar 2, back to bar 3. But let's say you just wanted to work on bar 3 on its own. These are red because we're in playlist mode. It's going to play once and then it's going to move to the next item in the playlist. If I tap on this, it will disable the playlist and kind of just let us work on this preset on its own and loop it. And so while we're in here, we can also modify the tempo. And although it's changing the tempo here for playback, you can see in the playlist it didn't affect the tempo that's assigned there. So you can change the tempo when you're out of playlist mode and not worry about it not messing with what's in here. So I tend to find that the hi-hats sound too loud generally. So in the mixer, we can go to sequencer 2. And this shows us line 1, which is the volume of everything in this line. So I can either just move this fader or I can tap it and that'll give me a giant fader. And you can tap on the volume level to just quickly set. So let's choose about 70%. And what's neat here is that every sound you've entered gets its own fader. So if you wanted to hear just the right foot part, you can mute the left foot. So now you can hear what the right foot of that quintuplet is doing against the hands up here. or just the left foot. And of course, you can bring in the metronome faders if you want to hear the quarter note. And you can push the bar up to hear the start of the bar. If you want eighth notes in, you can push the and fader up. So, you know, you've got your metronome that you can play back underneath any of that stuff. So that's bar 3. Now for bar 4, we have the same quintuplet hi-hat. So I have 2 options here. I can click on the plus and duplicate item with new name, which is what we did before. Or, and this is handy if you're on an iPhone and you don't want to keep switching between screens, if you click on the disk button and choose save as, and I choose to save this as bar 4, save will save it into the presets library. But if you choose save to playlist, it will save it as the next item in this playlist. So I'll do save to playlist and you'll see it appear right here. So that's really handy. And then all we need to do is modify sequencer 1 because sequence, So I'll click on there and edit pattern. And again, I'll tap and hold delete, which lets me clear everything. And then we'll enter this rhythm, which is a quarter note followed by a triplet. And then we've got 2/16 and an 8th joint. And you'll notice that there isn't an option for that down here. All you have is the full divisions, you know, divide into 3, divide into 4. But if you tap and hold on the button here, it will bring up this edit window. And then you can just remove the last note and you'll see the change reflected in the rhythm here. And if you forget to tap and hold, like if you entered it just like this, the edit button here does the same thing. So you can select what you want to edit, tap on edit, and that lets you make that change. And then the last beat is a sextuplet, so I'll enter that. So now we've got the rhythm in, filled the bar, we want to assign the sounds. So we've got floor tom, snare, floor tom, floor tom, floor tom, snare, floor tom, floor tom, snare, snare, crash, snare, snare, splash, I guess, or stack. So I don't have a stack sound on here. I could either use the hi-hat sound, but that's going to sound like the feet. So I'm going to reassign this L to a splash. So you can also search in here, tap on the magnifying glass. I'll just put a splash in there. I don't think I have any stack samples, but maybe I should add some. So snare, snare, splash, and then 3 snares. Oops. And that is that. So I'll hit done. And then again, I'm going to save the changes here and tap on this to exit the playlist so that we can just listen to this one. Pretty fast. Okay, so that's bar 4 done. And then we'll add bar 5, which is the thing with the 11 tuplet. So again, I'll use this method where I tap on save, save as bar 5, and save it to the playlist. And now we need to edit both of these. So I'll do the feet first. Tap on here, edit pattern, and tap and hold delete to clear everything. And then it says, do you want to clear the sounds as well? I'm going to say no, because we're going to want that kick, you know, the 2 feet single. So I might as well leave the sounds. And they don't show up until we add a rhythm. And we want 11 notes filling the bar. So I'm going to go to the whole note and then choose 11 and fill that in. Now, something to note here, I'm not sure if your version has this option above the whole note.
It does not.
It does not. Okay, well, the next version will, and this is basically the bar division. So this is division of a whole note, and this is great. You can have any number of notes filling this bar. But if your time signature was like 7/4, then that 11 over a whole note doesn't fill the bar. So if you wanted 11 over your bar of 7/4, you're more stuck. There are ways to do it, which I can show you, but this bar method will give you buttons to fill. Oh, actually, I lied. I can't do 11. But the standard ones, filling a bar with quarter notes or filling a bar with eighth notes, are there. You can fill a bar with 11, and you can do it on your version too. So let's say you're in 7/4. This saved rhythm side, which you can access by 3 dots that are right up here on the iPhone version, that will load this thing. And then you've got an XY button, which I think you will like more than most people. This lets you put any number of notes in the space of any other number of whatever note you choose. So to get 11 in a bar of 7/4, you would choose 11 in the space of 7 quarter notes. So that gives you the 11 over 7. So this XY you can use to do like almost anything that you would want. Anyway, that isn't what we want. So I'm going to go back to 4/4.
I've got a quick question.
Yeah.
Can you export this as like a WAV file?
Yes, you can. I'll show you in a second. So 4/4, whole note, 11. I think that's correct. Interestingly, oh no, that's right. Okay. And then let's put the rhythm over the top of that, which is this one, bar 5. So sequencer 1, edit the pattern, delete all those, and clear the sounds because it's going to be different sounds. So here we've got the 1 and the A of the beat. So I'm going to tap and hold on the 16th note button and remove the middle 2 notes. And then we have the and. So you have options here. You can either go to the 8th note in the picker and put a rest and the thing, or you can stay on the quarter note, tap and hold this and remove the first 2 notes and the last note. And then another tip, if you had something like this that you wanted to use multiple times, if you find yourself entering this a lot and you get bored of tapping and holding and removing notes, you can tap and hold in the display up here, and you get this option to copy, which lets you copy it and you can paste it. Duplicate, gotcha, which will put it next to it. If you save it, it gets added to this saved rhythms palette. So you can save any rhythms you want down here. So that's a quick way of doing that. So maybe I'll tap and save this. So we've got the offbeat 8th note. And then let's add the next one, which is the E. And you can also save from this edit window by going to options, save rhythm. So now we've got some useful things. And then finally, we'll put the quintuplet at the end. Filled the bar, so we'll assign the sounds. So snare drum, tom, 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 4 snares, and a stack, which I'll put as a splash. And then when we're done with that, hit done. And again, I will save the changes here and tap on play once so that it will loop this and I can hear it, just this preset back. Okay, you still with me?
Yeah.
So we have now this first 5 bars with the click at the beginning. So you get the idea about entering the rhythms, and I think I will show you what I did with this, because I had to think about this a little bit. But before we do that, I'll show you some useful things. So the first thing is, you asked about if you can export the audio. You can export it real time by tapping. Let's go to the top of this. tapping on the preset name and choosing toggle record, and that puts it into record mode. And now whatever you are going to play is going to be recorded. So I will do this. The red button kind of indicates it's being recorded. And this is just going to loop around a bunch of times. So whenever you stop it, you will be given a share dialog, and you can save that to your files, or you can airdrop it to a different device or whatever you want. I have an app called Audio Share, I think, which is really good for audio files, and I just plonk it in there, and that lets you convert it if you want to turn it to an MP3 or something. But yeah, that's how you can create audio files of your things. Okay, so that's how you can export audio things. Now let's look at a couple of useful things within the playlist. If you wanted to loop just bar 3 and 4, for example, edit mode for playlists is this pencil button in the top right. That lets you rearrange items with the handles, and it lets you select items and perform actions on them. And it also lets you loop them. So this is the loop button at the bottom. So now we're just going to get these two items played. So that's a useful feature. And you might also want to loop, for example, the click into one of these. So another way to get into edit mode is to just tap and hold on a row. So I'm going to say bar 2, which is my 4-beat click, and then bar 5, and I'm going to choose to loop these. And it says, do I want to add those to my existing loop or replace? So I'm going to replace. So now I can just work on the 4-beat click into the bar 5. So the other thing that you will really want to know is all of these items. Let me just disable looping. So I just tap on the edit and then click on the disable looping button. All of these items have individual tempos, which you might very well want for a song. You know, tempo changes in songs is something I'm sure you have sometimes.
Yeah.
But for this example, let's say you want to work on bar 5 and you go, okay, I'm going to work on that at 80 BPM. And then you loop that with something else. You'll note that this tempo's changed, but the other ones haven't. So what do you have to go and click on this and set that to 80 BPM? And that would be a pain. So the first thing to know about is this padlock on the tempo is what I call tempo lock. And it just turns the tempo off all of these and sets one main tempo. So if your song is all at the same tempo, this is the quickest way to deal with that. So this will all play back at 80 now.
Okay.
There is something. Let me show you a couple of tricks. So let's say that this song repeated this 4/4 section, and in the second repeat, the tempo was half time or something like that. So this section header basically is the parent of these 3 items underneath it. So I can duplicate this section by clicking on the plus and choose duplicate section. And I'll make just one copy. So now we have that whole section here and then the whole section again. And I can modify elements of this if I want. But let's just look at tempo things. So let's say that the first time we play it through, we play it at 100. Now, if you've selected an individual item and you set the tempo, you can use these plus minus buttons. You can see it's being changed here. That's 124, this is 80, this is 80. If you want to set the tempo for the whole section, you can do it by selecting the section and setting the tempo. So let's say we play this section through at 80. It should set the tempo for everything in that section. And then this one is unchanged. So we'll set this section to be 160. we'll do it double time. I'm sure that wouldn't be very easy to play. But let's say that's how the song went, right? 80 BPM and then 160 BPM. Now, what if that's your goal speed? That's what you want to be able to play it at, but you want to work on it more slowly. If I change this tempo from 80 to something else to 70, it's not going to affect this. And now it won't be the same relation of this is double time. So if you have a song where there are tempo changes and you want to practice the whole thing more slowly, you've got to sit around and do math and figure out what tempos different sections should be at. So to deal with that scenario, if you tap and hold on the play button in a playlist, you get this button picker, which lets you set the size of your buttons, which I use live a lot, so I can have a giant play button for counting off songs. You can choose whether or not you see the tempo controls. And when tempo controls are visible, there's this option for tempo percentage. And if you turn that on, you get a slider on here. And now you can just play back the whole playlist at 50% up to 200% of whatever the tempo is. So if I set this to 50%, then in theory, this should play back at 40 and this should play back at 80.
Right.
So now you can just use this if you want to play, play it at different tempos. Oops. So that's a useful thing to know about. I had some emails early on for people who didn't realize what this did and had it up by accident. And it was up here and they're on a live gig with like an orchestra or something. And they're like, I hit play and it played back really quick and everyone's looking at me. And what's so
That's a nightmare.
I know. Like at first I just thought, what? Then I realized he was using a feature that is meant to actually do that. We just didn't know what was going on. It's like, it says 80 and then I hit play. It gives me a clicker. So I will disable this. So tap and hold the play button and turn off tempo percentage. So that's how you can quickly set tempos for sections. Do you have any questions?
No. I guess show me how to do this bar 7/4, and then I have should be a pretty easy nested tuplet question, which will serve as a demonstration.
And hopefully not a bug demonstration. Okay, so I am going to, because I've already set some sounds and things on here potentially, I'm going to duplicate this item before I put in the section header, just as a kind of efficiency workflow. So tap on the plus, duplicate item with new name and call it bar 6. And then I'm going to tap on bar 5 to insert the section header after that. And I'll put in a section header that says 7/4 just to kind of make it really clear that there's a time signature change here. The time signature is shown in here, but this helps with the section thing. If you divide your song up into like verse, chorus, bridge, all that kind of stuff, then when I've fixed the bug, you can very quickly rearrange those things and duplicate sections and, create a structure that way. So this doesn't have the hi-hats, right? And the feet. Right. This is just a groove. So I'm going to tap on sequencer 2 and clear sequencer. So that's empty. And then to change the time signature, if you just wanted a simple click in 7, you can actually change the time signature from this page by tapping on it. And I'll pick 7/4. And when you do that, you're asked if you want to just change the time signature, which will leave this rhythm in and move the bar line, or create a rhythm which will populate it with 7 quarter notes. So that's handy sometimes if you just quickly want a, click in 7. We're going to edit this pattern and delete those notes, and then look at this bar. So what do we have? A group of 16th notes with the first and last note split. So I could either enter the 32nd notes like this and edit and remove the ones I don't want, which is, I have to think about that a little bit. You can see it being reflected up here as you do it, make your changes. Another thing, which is a new feature, which I think is in the version you have, is if you tap and hold 16th notes, so you have these 4, in the options, there's a split notes option, and that turns it into 8 notes, but just leaves the ones that you had populated. So then I can just tap on the second note and the last one. So now we've got this rhythm. And then this is where it gets a little tricky, because you have a triplet in the middle of a group of 16ths. So I can't do this in PolyNome written like this, but what we can do is put a single 16th note, which is down here, and then a triplet over 2 16th notes. So there's your 2 16th notes and there's your triplet. And then finally a 16th note split into 2 30-seconds. So unfortunately, it's not quite as nice to read, but it is possible.
Gotcha.
So this one, again, we can put in the, tap and hold, split notes, and split the third one. And then here we've got a triplet over 8ths. And then this is going to be, I'll put in these 4 and remove the last note. And then what have we got? This one. Okay, this one took some thinking about. So I'll put in these first 3 16th notes. And here's another tip. So 3 16th notes is a dotted 8th note. So you could tap on the dot down here, and that gives you divisions of a dotted 8th note. And then I can put in the 3 16th notes, which is now a barred group of 3 16th notes instead of a triplet. And then I can split that to double up the middle one. So edit, split notes. You may not have the split notes option on your version. In which case, you got it? Okay, cool. So that's this first part. And then we have a triplet over 2 16ths. So I'll turn off the dot. Triplet over 2 16ths, and the middle note of that is split, I believe. So edit, options, split the middle note. And then we're on the home run. So this is a group of 3 16ths again. So I can go to the dotted 8th and put in 3. And I want to split the first note. So that's that one. And then another triplet thing. So 2, what have we got? I'll do the 4 here and remove the last note. And finally, a triplet. And the bar lines appeared. It says I've filled the bar, so I know I haven't accidentally put a wrong note value in somewhere. That's kind of handy. So now we're going to add the kick and snare. Now note that another sort of limitation of PolyNome is that there's only 2 lines to add sounds to, and there's occasions on here where you have 3 sounds happening at the same time. So one option is to use the other sequencer to put in those other notes, or in this case, because that ride bell is happening on every quarter note, I'm just going to use the metronome quarter note fader for the ride bell sound. And there's kick notes on basically everything apart from this one snare up here. Right. Because if it was everything, you could tap on here and hit the kick, and it would put a kick on every note. But we don't want a kick on every note. We want a missing kick on this note. So what I'm going to do is turn off this thing that loops the sticking, because sometimes that's handy. If you want to play a paradiddle over this rhythm, you can go right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left, and it will play a paradiddle over this crazy rhythm, which is kind of fun. But if you don't want that, Because sometimes you might put in a groove and then forget that you have to fill up the end with rests, otherwise it will start over with your sticking. So this reset off button pertains to the sounds that you have entered, and I'm going to choose fill cycle with rests. And what that does is basically, if you don't assign a note, it doesn't play anything. You can see it's not looping the kicks there. So that's just going to play kick on the first note. So to make it easier to read, I'm going to put the kicks on line 2, and I am going to put in this snare on this note, I believe, just to help me see what to miss out. And I'm going to fill this with kicks. And then miss out that one, and then fill the rest with kicks. So that's the kick pattern. And now I need to put in the other snares. So they're happening on 2, 4, 6, like every other beat. And I'm going to refer to this because it's harder to see where the 16th groups are. So I know the first one is here. Now, if I put an L in, it's going to move everything along. So you'll see this will move. So I'm just going to hit del to kind of backspace, Gotcha. So that's 2. And then we've got the triplet. The next one happens on the start of the second triplet, which is here. So delete and then snare. The next one is this one we've got already. And the final one, that is the last one. So I don't actually have to fill this pattern with any more rests because I'm in fill cycle with rests. I'll just quickly show you if reset was off, you'll see that it's going to loop this pattern over and you'll just get a random snare appear where you didn't really want it. So you would have to fill up this with rests so that it didn't do that. I'll just do that. So I'll save the changes. I will tap on this to exit the playlist so that we can just hear this one on its own. That is such a weird pattern. How did you come up with that? What were you thinking?
I think I was just improvising, and I came up with this double bass pattern, and yeah, notated it or recorded it, took it down somehow, and then it ended up making it in this song.
That's cool. So to get the ride symbol up, I can either put it on this sequencer by putting in 7/4 and filling the bar with quarter notes and putting a ride on there. That works. Or if you needed to use this for something else, like quintuplets on the feet, which wouldn't, well, actually you don't have any more feet, but I'll clear that. You can, yeah. It can also use the 1 fader, the metronome, and then you can set the sounds for the metronome and choose ride bell. So now this is the ride. Another thing which you may find useful, there's auto voice counting in here, which I'm in the process of making easier to set. But you go to set sound for the metronome and search for voice.
Voice count.
And you put an auto voice count on the 1, which is the quarter note. It will count the time signature for you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Which might be helpful in some circumstances.
Voice count.
So let's put that back to the ride. And there we go. So that's how we do that. And I don't think there's anything else in here that is any more difficult than what we've entered already. I think we've kind of covered what you need to know in order to do that. There was something I thought of, but it slipped my mind. But maybe you have questions.
I just have a nested tuplet question, just a quick and easy. probably will be easy. Demonstration of one.
Okay.
It can just be in 1/4, so just one, resolve within one count, one pulse. Quintuplets, and subdivide one of the notes into a triplet.
Okay. So let me start a new playlist. So we created this new playlist by tapping on the plus and choosing add new playlist, and it's here is where we're seeing it. If I create another one, we don't lose this. It's just saved in the playlist manager, and changes to playlists are saved automatically. So if I were to go to playlist manager, you can see this is the one that I had before. This is the one we just created. So if I create a new playlist, we won't lose that work. So let's call it nested tuplet demo. So I'll add a new item. First item will be a bar of 2/4. And this way we can kind of hear how the quarter note continues. So 2/4. And I'll save that. And it will, by the way, if you try and do something, it will ask you about unsaved changes. So there's not many situations, I think, where you can accidentally not save them in a playlist. So we'll do the nested tuplet, and we'll do 5 in the space of 2 quarter notes. We'll just call it 5 of 2. So this is a bit of a workaround that PolyNome has to do. This is showing the time signature as 2/4 in this nested tuplet, but you'll note if we go and edit the pattern, that nested tuplet bar disappears and it's showing up as a 5/4 time signature. So this means you can enter anything that you would in 5/4. So let's say you've got 3 notes, and then you split one into a triplet, and then you have maybe the last one's done like this. So you treat it as a bar of 5/4, and when you go back to the main page, it's showing in 2/4 with this tuplet bar over the top. Does that make sense? And the thing to kind of note here is that the metronome is thinking in 5/4, I think. So I'm going to tap on this to disable the playlist for a second and play this back. So there's various things that we're hearing here. Let me change the sound of this. So I'll go to the sound picker, and I'll pick like a sound like that. The 2 of the 2/4 is being simulated in sequence of 2. So if I push up line 1 of sequence of 2, that's kind of what we expect. But the metronome 1 fader is playing back the 5. That's playing back the 5/4 time signature. So I know it's not the prettiest thing, but this is the continuous quarter note down here. So if I turn up only sequence of 2, and then we listen to these 2 played next to each other, you can hear that that's continuing that quarter note pulse.
Right.
And then if I turn up the volume of this, you can hear So that's how nested tuplets works. It does let you enter pretty much anything you want, but it is a little bit confusing, I will say.
Cool. All right.
Any more questions?
Nope. That'll do it.
Fried.
Yeah, that's enough to chew on.
Congratulations to anyone who's still watching. I'm going to stop the screen share so I can see your pretty face. Thank you for kind of being a guinea pig. I find all this stuff fascinating, especially what you're doing and how you come up with it. And I hope this will be of use to you in some way or other. there are like wish list features that I have, things that I'm working on to speed up various processes. Certain things just maybe they'll happen eventually. I would love it if I could output this as drum notation rather than just a single line of music. But the way it's built makes that really difficult. But I've said that about things in the past, and then eventually I've figured out a way to do them. Like nested tuplets, I didn't think were ever going to be possible, and I found a way to kind of jimmy them in there. So, let me know as you play around with it if there are things that you wish it could do, and I'll add them to the list.
Sure.
And some of the things it might already do. It does a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, I can tell. There's a lot to dig into.
But I mean, like just a real quick thing. Let's say you were just working on a section. So you wanted to work on just this 3, 4, 5 section here, and maybe with the click, right? So you can select those items and loop them. We already talked about that. You can also, this playlist is a looping playlist. So once it finishes bar 5, it goes back to the top. In the playlist controls at the bottom are options for tempo change. And if you turn that on, you can say increase the tempo by, say, 5 BPM on each loop. And you could turn on tempo boundaries, and you can choose your minimum tempo. So let's say minimum's 80 and maximum is 90. Then this will play through 80. And on the loop, it will increase to 85, and then it will increase to 90. And then it's hit a boundary, so it will then, so now we're at 85. So you can kind of work on tempo, things like that.
That's cool.
Currently, there is no way to say play it 16 times and then increase the tempo. But I have ideas for different ways of approaching this that could be useful. But yeah, that's just another feature that's
another feature.
Yeah, there's a lot of features.
Yeah.
Okay. I won't take up any more of your time, but thanks again for this. It's been good.
My pleasure. Thanks for hooking me up with the app. Looking forward to digging into it more and seeing what kind of outlandish things I can do.
I am really looking forward to seeing what kind of outlandish things you can do with it. I'll post links to your website and stuff like that, and the album where people can check out what that thing sounds like with all the rest of the instrumentation. And
fantastic.
Yeah, thanks again.
See you, everyone.